Our Antarctic expedition sets forth from Hobart, not in an icebreaker, but aboard an airliner. The Australian government started weekly summer flights to its Antarctic stations last year. For decades, the only way south was an epic 2-week voyage through some of the world's most treacherous seas. Now that's all been reduced to a 4.5-hour ride in an Airbus.
2,500.
Our destination appears as a distant slash on the ice. Centrepiece of the $46 million Airlink project is the Wilkins runway. It's built on a huge glacier, making it one of the world's few airports that moves 12 metres a year. This is no place to linger, and the ground crew swiftly load passengers and cargo for the home leg. The 65-kilometre drive to Casey Station takes nearly as long as the flight. Out here, it's easy to be overwhelmed by the vastness of the empty continent. Twice the size of Australia, 98% covered by ice. Casey is one of 3 Australian stations clinging to the Antarctic coast. It looks like the mining camp that Lego built, the colour coding instantly identifying a building's function. The new Airlink has sent Casey into overdrive for the short summer research season.
We've got a bit of collaborative science going on this year.
This is Station Leader Graham Cook's 3rd year-long stint down here, and he says the long periods of isolation are now history.
In the past we had people come down on the ship and they were here for the whole of the summer or for the summer and the winter, and now we're finding that every week there's 15, 16 new people come in on a flight and 15 people go out. So the culture of the station population changes. We've got new friends every week.
On arrival, everyone, us included, is kitted up for 24 hours survival training.
We'll walk around today covering as many of the skills as we need to for survival training, including tonight to bivvy out or stay out for the night without a tent.
With 80-kilometre-an-hour gusts and a wind chill of -30, we trudge out beyond the rocky coastal fringe into nothing. Just the gentle rise of the ice into what the old hands dubbed the Great White Hill.
And this is a fairly typical summer's day in the Antarctic.
Reasonably.
Here in East Antarctica, there's no sign of the tourist numbers drawn to the more accessible west, directly under South America. Harsh conditions prevail, and you have to know how to survive, as the Antarctic can very swiftly kill you.
The weather could change here from clear blue sky to a full whiteout or blizzard in as little as about 20 minutes at Casey Station.
But good weather can return just as fast. We settle down for a night on the ice.
And it's good night.
Watching a summer sky that never completely darkens, when the seductive lure of this strange world finally reveals itself. Modern jet aircraft get the scientists here, but out on the skiway, a very different aviation experience awaits. This World War II vintage DC-3 is regarded as the toughest plane for the job ahead.
Good. Okay.
It's the centrepiece of the Icecap project, involving Australia, the UK and the US, with Canadian pilots. They're all part of the International Polar Year, a massive multinational research scheme investigating climate change. American glaciologist Jack Holt is part scientist, part explorer.
This part of the Antarctic ice sheet has been largely unexplored, and so this international program is the first big effort to understand what's beneath the surface.
What percentage of the world's ice is locked up here?
Oh, it's over 90% of the world's ice. It's kind of amazing that we don't know what's beneath it, because it's a big part of our planet.
The Icecap team takes off in the half-light of midnight, when interference from the Earth's magnetic field is lowest. .50-metre-high ice cliffs mark the very edge of vast glaciers before they shear off.
Some of these glaciers, like Totten Glacier here, its catchment, the area where all of the snow and ice that accumulates and drains into it, is thousands of kilometers across. I mean, it's huge. It probably contains more ice in its catchment than all of Greenland and West Antarctica combined.
That's just one.
That's just one. How long have these guys been going? 30 minutes?
25.
Deep ice means old ice. Find Antarctica's deepest ice, in parts nearly 5 kilometres thick, and Jack Holt will know where to drill for the holy grail of climate change research, a 1 million-year-old core of ice.
There was some kind of a change about 1 million years ago in how the Earth's climate system works, and there may have been even more rapid climate change in the past, beyond 800,000 years. So one of the things we're doing is searching for even older ice in Antarctica to core and study direct samples of the atmosphere from over 1 million years ago.
Assisting in this scientific treasure hunt is an array of sophisticated equipment. Ice-penetrating radar, and even part of a navigation system borrowed from a US nuclear submarine. This summer they'll cover an area bigger than Texas. Every flight is a mission of discovery as they detect massive mountain ranges, valleys, and amazingly, vast unfrozen lakes, all buried deep beneath the ice.
This is like, in some sense, a final frontier on this planet. East Antarctica, where we're standing, has an ice sheet that, if it all melted, global sea level would go up 60 to 70 meters. And so if it changes just a tiny fraction, you could see significant increases in sea level.
Out on the water, there's a real sense of urgency as Australian scientists like Martin Riddle chase answers to one of the hottest environmental and political issues of our time.
Why is the Antarctic so important to climate change research?
For a number of reasons, actually. It's one of the most sensitive parts of the world to climate change processes. So it's one of the places where we're going to see the impacts of climate change first. But it's also really important because there are long-term records of past climates locked away in the Antarctic ice. While international attention has focused on the Northern Hemisphere, Greenland and the Arctic,
It's what happens down here that could really tip the balance. For years, it was assumed Antarctica had escaped global warming. Not anymore.
Is the Antarctic ice subject to climate change, global warming?
It's pretty certain that the Antarctic Peninsula is losing some ice. Some of the glacier basins there are definitely shrinking. It's not yet confirmed whether the East Antarctic is actually shrinking yet, and some of the work that's happening here at the moment is looking at that very question.
Scientists now estimate global sea levels could rise by 1.5 metres by the end of this century. That's nearly double the most pessimistic prediction of only 2 years ago. But no one has accurately calculated the Antarctic factor, the point of catastrophic polar meltdown.
If it does happen, it will be something that happens over centuries and thousands of years. It's a long-term thing. But if it does happen, and if we get to a point, a tipping point, where it can't turn back, it'll be completely out of our control.
But there's another far more immediate climate change crisis looming in just 3 decades. And it threatens the very survival of these penguins and other wildlife. It's called ocean acidification. Increasing amounts of man-made CO2 gases are being absorbed by these freezing waters and may soon start killing off minute marine life, severing a vital link in the Antarctic food chain.
The iconic species of the Antarctic, the penguins, the seals, the whales, are all dependent on these small planktonic organisms for their survival.
So you're talking about a catastrophic problem emerging here?
Absolutely so, yes. A complete changeover in the ecosystem. We're going to cross this threshold within about 30 years. But ocean acidification is a problem that we've got to deal with now. It is very, very immediate. We're going to see those changes happen first in the Antarctic, but if we don't do something about our CO2 emissions, we're then going to see them happening in temperate areas and on the tropics.
The Australian government proclaims its commitment to climate change science. But at Casey, there's frustration that the rhetoric isn't matched by reality. Surprisingly, there's only a dozen researchers here. Most of the 76 expeditioners are busy just keeping the station running.
With the introduction of the air transport system, we haven't yet had the scientific payback from that. We're still putting in some of the infrastructure. So you'll have seen that at Casey there's a lot of people, but there's relatively few scientists down here at the moment.
Airlink aside, the Antarctic Division's annual budget has remained frozen at about $100 million for the past decade. Graham Cook says his team is increasingly overworked and under-resourced.
I think that we could do a lot more, but it's one of those areas of government that's vastly underfunded, and we do a great job for the funds that we get. And there's a lot more work that could be done, a lot more science could be done in Antarctica. If some of our ministers are out there listening to this interview, guys, open the purse strings.
Fortunately, it's not money, but a sense of adventure that lures most expeditioners to Casey. Jen McGee, a plant operator from South Australia, is one of 10 women on station.
Good air?
Yep, that's it, yep.
Staring out from the walls is the old guard of expeditions past, the once exclusively male club of winterers. They'd endure a year down here, living in little more than plywood sheds. Jen McGee's father was a winterer in 1961, and it was his tales of adventure that brought her here.
He still looks the same, chubby cheeks and a bit cheeky. That's him there.
So what does he think about you being here today?
Absolutely blown away. Pretty excited and really happy that I could share some of the similar experiences that he had down here.
Yeah. Was he any worries or concerns that, you know, his daughter coming down into this
not
environment?
for his best boy, no. He had 4 daughters, my dad, so I'm probably the closest thing to a son as far as adventuring and travelling and just getting amongst it. So yeah, he's pretty happy.
Inside the living quarters with its ski lodge ambience, life is extremely comfortable. There's a get-together once a week, plenty of food, free beer and good company. But one topic appears to be off the limits of polite conversation: the sensitive issue of Antarctic politics. Despite the extreme isolation here, politics is never far away. Australia claims 42% of all Antarctica as Australian territory. Under the terms of the 1961 Antarctic Treaty, the whole continent has been declared a kind of international zone, devoted to science and peace, where the military and mining are banned. But spend a bit of time here at Casey and you come away with the feeling that sovereignty is every bit as important as science. Under the terms of the treaty, no other country needs ask Australian permission to set up a base here, as the Italians, French, Russians and others have done. And all are now closely watching the rapid emergence of another player on the ice, China. Enter the Snow Dragon, Chinese expeditioners from the research ship Yulong. There's a long tradition of scientific cooperation in the Antarctic. Even during the height of the Cold War, enemies left their disputes behind as they set foot on the ice.
Antarctica beer, yes.
Very good, excellent.
The Yulong is the headquarters ship for a huge expedition to build a base, China's third, at a location called Dome A. At 4,200 metres, it's the highest, coldest point in Australian Antarctic territory.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
China doesn't recognise Australia's claim and didn't seek Canberra's permission to be here. The Chinese expedition is bigger and far more ambitious than anything Australia has attempted.
How long will it take you to get to Zhongshan from here?
It will about 5 days.
5 days?
Yeah.
As expedition leader, Professor Huigun Yang and his entourage tour Casey. Every structure and piece of equipment is methodically photographed.
And if you look over on the point, is where the American station was. Chinese expeditioners from the Zulong. I'd like to, everybody to just welcome them.
The Chinese acknowledge they've gained much from Australia's century of experience here. They receive a warm welcome in the bar and a taste of Casey's social life.
So this is where the Icecap people are working at the moment.
Professor Yang is surprised to meet the Icecap team. He confirms that China is also racing to be the first to secure a million-year-old ice core.
So for Dome, we are trying to drill the ice core to the bottom to recover the climate change for about 1 million years.
You think?
Yeah.
You think you will find 1 million years?
Yes. We hope.
Yes.
We hope.
Despite the tradition of international cooperation, You get the sense that there hasn't been too much sharing of notes over the Icecap project.
I'm very surprised. I didn't realize that you are doing
Some friendly competition.
oh yeah, yeah. And I think we can find opportunity to collaborate.
But Icecap's Jack Holt is sceptical of China's motives in choosing the Dome A site.
Are they setting up in the right place?
Well, we'll see, I guess, in a few years. But we actually think that this area that we are studying, the Aurora Basin, is more likely to contain an old ice record, going back to 1 million years than up in the mountains, that are beneath the Dome A up there where they're studying.
Yeah. Why do you think they've gone for that spot?
Well, I think it's a little appealing, in some ways, to go to the very highest, coldest point in Antarctica and establish a base. So I think that might be part of their motivation.
Yeah, a bit beyond science, perhaps.
Yeah, and you can hardly blame them. That's happened before. I mean, South Pole Station is really not there because of the science. It's because it's the South Pole.
And that's an American base.
And that's an American base. So, it's a matter of presence and a signal to others to say, yes, we're here. It's difficult. We made it.
The Chinese and Americans may not be the only ones mixing science and national interest.
It's an amazing place, and the opportunity to live and work here is a tremendous one.
For Station Dr Edi Albert, the Antarctic provides the opportunity to combine medicine with his passion for the outdoors. While mission leaders here, naturally enough, have to measure their language, Edi Albert feels under no such constraint. He spells out the growing chasm between Australia's official aims and what he sees as the real agenda.
Why are we down here, I suppose, is what you're asking, isn't it? I don't rightly know. I mean, why are the Americans interested in being here? Why all of a sudden are we finding other nations, Italy, France, China, suddenly, contributing millions of dollars in equivalent to building new stations? And the answer here isn't, it can't just be science, can it?
What is the answer?
I think what most people who've been, in and out of the Antarctic Division or their equivalents are fairly convinced that it's about minerals.
Australia was instrumental in ensuring that mining was banned under the Antarctic Treaty. But what may ultimately save the continent from exploitation is the sheer inaccessibility of the coal and iron ore buried deep beneath the ice.
I think that the treaty's fairly safe at the moment. The resources are left alone because of the difficulties of getting to them, and I'm not that sure of what is available. I think that the treaty's fairly strong and hopefully will stay put for a long time.
However, just beyond Casey, not far from where the Chinese research ship Zhulong lies anchored, there's a far more accessible resource beneath the seabed: oil.
The sovereignty questions are largely set aside at the moment. Who knows what will happen if the pressure on resources, mineral resources and oil exploration or oil resources increases into the future. When I joined the Antarctic program in 1994, the chief scientist at the time used to joke that it would not be cost effective to take oil from the Antarctic unless oil was $65 a barrel, and he said that with a smile on his face because it would never be possible that it would be that expensive. And of course we've seen it much more expensive than that.
Back out at the Wilkins runway, the Australian Airbus has just delivered a group of Chinese VIPs. Here to officially open China's new base over at Dome A.
China and India are probably the future of Antarctic research. They are going to have the resources in 20 years' time, 30 years' time. Australia should be building our relationships with them. We've got very good relationships.
China is the world's largest emitter of the man-made CO2 gases, now threatening Antarctica's very existence. So Beijing's engagement here is encouraged, up to a point. Behind the welcoming smiles, though, there's disillusionment that Australia is being left behind.
I think that the government really needs to look at what we're doing down here and decide what it is that we want to do down here and fund it appropriately.
So it really requires people with great foresight and commitment and dedication to commit the resources to position ourselves to deal with the future that we know is coming to us.
The implication is that we don't get that at the moment.
That is the implication, yes.
The Northern Hemisphere's ice meltdown is already altering the political dynamic of the Arctic border states of Russia, Canada and the US. Down here, the Antarctic Treaty still keeps national ambitions in check. But for how long? Can Australia still credibly lay claim to 42% of this continent if its once dominant presence is seen to be melting away?
Why is Australia here? Is this about sovereignty? Is this about muscle flexing in the international community? Is this about mineral resources in 10 years' time? Is it genuinely about science, looking at climate change and trying to make things better for the future? I don't see any honesty from above about what we're actually doing here.